I sent the scandalous video of the signing day to the media. In the video, I was heavily pregnant, crying and saying, "The baby is innocent." Marcus sneered, "If you don't sign, don't blame me if I can't protect even the one in your belly." To secure Willow's position as heir bearer, my husband, at the family meeting the day after our wedding, threw out an abhorrent prenuptial agreement, forcing me to sign it. The agreement had only 3 clauses. 1. You must accept Willow. You can only conceive after she gives birth to the first son if you are already pregnant. You must have an abortion. 2. After marriage, you must meticulously wait on Willow, available 24 hours a day, on call. 3. All your income must be handed over and managed by Willow. My fingertips trembled, my ears ringing. Seeing me in a daze, my husband whispered softly, "Aurora, be good. It's not easy for Willow alone. This is just a formality to show your stance. Once you sign, we can get our marriage certificate. To complete the task quickly, Willow will stay in our marital bed starting tonight. We'll switch back once she's pregnant. You'll move to the maid's room. It'll be easier to take care of her." I clutched my lower abdomen tightly, where my 2-month-old child was growing, looking up at the cold gazes of the household. I suddenly understood. It turned out that marrying me was just to find an obedient pawn for the household. Since you are heartless, don't blame me for being unjust. What should have been a warm newlywed night felt like I was plunged into an icy abyss. Looking at the abhorrent prenuptial agreement in my hand, my voice trembled. "Marcus, you want me to sign this? It's just a formality." He reached out to touch my head, but I turned away, dodging his hand. Willow has been a widow for many years. The family fears the main family line ending, which is why they set this rule for the abhorrent prenuptial agreement. Don't worry, once she has a child, we can live our own lives. Our own lives? I almost laughed out loud, but a metallic taste rose in my throat. Was this man in a suit, standing before me, still the Marcus I remembered? The who unfailingly brought me homemade, loving breakfasts every day, even drawing a smiley face with ketchup on the fried eggs. The who abandoned billion-dollar contracts just to spend my birthday with me, even waiting 2 hours in the rain, holding a 3-tiered cake. The who, under a meteor shower, with a wildly beating heart, promised he would never let me down, or else he would have no successor. Just when I thought everything was falling into place, blossoming into fruition, what awaited me was not a honeymoon itinerary, but an absurd, abhorrent prenuptial agreement, and from then on, a life with 3 people. I stared at the column for marital obligations in the agreement. My stomach churning. "Aurora?" Marcus's call pulled me back to reality. His face gradually stiffened, his knuckles tapping an impatient rhythm on the agreement. Just as he was about to persuade me again, Willow, who was beside him, suddenly coughed, wrapped in a plain white shawl. She leaned languidly on the chaise lounge, looking like a gardenia that could wither at any moment. Her pale fingertips clutched at the fabric over her chest, her eyes slightly red. "Marcus, don't make it difficult for Aurora. It's my bad luck. I brought death to my husband. And now I'm dragging you down too." Her words seemed to trigger a switch, and the household, who had been silent, suddenly sprang to life. Mrs. Beverly, who had praised me as a blessing to the family and claimed the family was truly blessed to have me only half a month ago, now slammed her hand on the table. "Aurora, Willow is delicate. Can't you have some conscience?" Mr. William, who had held a wine glass at the engagement party and promised my father I would be the apple of the household's eye, sneered, "You don't even dare to sign an agreement. You're not fit to enter the household." And David, sitting at the head of the table, whose smiling face as he handed me a generous wedding gift during the tea ceremony yesterday was still vivid in my mind, now struck his carved walking stick heavily on the marble floor. "If you don't sign, get out of the household." Amidst the chorus of accusations, I looked at Marcus. The warmth in his eyes visibly cooled at an alarming rate. He suddenly grabbed me and dragged me into a corner. The familiar scent of cologne, mixed with an unfamiliar coldness, rushed over me. "Stop making a scene. It's just a signature. Why make everyone uncomfortable?" "Uncomfortable?" I pulled free from his grip, red marks quickly appearing on my wrist. "Marcus, you keep saying Willow is just a widow, but now you want me to sign this ridiculous agreement. Who exactly is making a scene?" The air solidified for a moment. A flash of brutality I had never seen before crossed his eyes. As he raised his right hand, a gust of wind followed. Slap! A stinging pain exploded on my cheek, and my ears rang. I stumbled, bracing myself against the table corner. knocking over a teacup that shattered on the floor, just like our marriage, shattered into a mess after only one night. Marcus slowly withdrew his hand, as if savoring the feeling. He straightened his slightly disheveled cuff, his voice laced with ice. "Why are you so unreasonable?" I covered my face and suddenly laughed. The man who had held me on our marital bed yesterday, promising to be good to me for life, hit me today for another woman. My palm instinctively pressed against my lower abdomen, where a 2-month-old life was growing, and in the crumpled agreement I clutched, it was written in black and white, "If already pregnant, you must have an abortion." Tears finally fell, splashing onto the agreement, blurring the ink with wet stains. I looked up at him, my voice hoarse and pained. "Marcus, what am I to you? Just a pawn for the household?" The air seemed to freeze. Marcus's face turned pale at my word pawn, his throat bobbed, and he opened his mouth, seemingly wanting to explain something, but before he could speak, Willow, nearby, suddenly went limp, collapsing to the ground. "Marcus," she called out faintly, her eyelids fluttering before she fainted. Marcus rushed over instinctively, his knees hitting the teak wood floor with a heavy thud, completely unfazed by the impact. He scooped her into his arms. "Willow, Willow!" His trembling fingers brushed away the loose hair from her forehead, his careful demeanor as if he were holding a fragile treasure. Mrs. Beverly shrieked. "Aurora, do you really want to torment Willow to death?" Her nails dug directly into the tip of my nose. I stumbled back to steps, my back hitting a cabinet. "I tormented her." I pointed at myself, my voice trembling uncontrollably. "Can't you see she's faking it? She was full of vigor just a moment ago, and now she faints just like that." I stared at Willow's hanging wrist, where crescent-shaped red marks from where she had secretly pinched herself 5 minutes ago were still visible. I looked at Marcus. He was carefully carrying Willow to the couch. His fingertips gently caressed her cheek, his concern almost overflowing from his eyes. "Marcus, do you also think I should apologize?" He didn't lift his head, not pausing from wiping Willow's forehead, his voice as cold as ice. "Aurora, stop making a scene. If anything happens to Willow, you won't be able to bear the consequences." My heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand, hurting so much I could barely stand. It turned out that in extreme pain, one could indeed laugh. I tugged at the corner of my mouth. "Fine, that's just perfect." I wiped my face, my palms covered in cold tears. "The household. You really are an eye-opener." Mrs. Beverly suddenly rushed over and grabbed my arm. "If suffers any mishap, Her sharp nails dug into my flesh, hurting my wrist bone. I winced in pain and sharply shook her off. "Don't touch me." The push wasn't strong, but Mrs. Beverly acted as if she had been violently struck. She staggered backward, letting out an exaggerated shriek. "Eleanor." Marcus's face instantly changed. He lunged forward, catching her, then turned to me and roared. "Aurora, are you insane?" The rage churning in his eyes reminded me of a stormy night last year when he beat off my harassers, violent and sinister. I was startled by him and, before I could react, he violently pushed me. Bang! My back hit the edge of the table heavily, the dull thud against my spine clearly audible. A sharper, searing pain erupted from my lower abdomen, like a red-hot knife twisting inside. My vision went black, my legs gave out, and I knelt on the floor, my skirt fanning out. Something warm and liquid trickled down my thighs. I looked down, bright red blood, drop by drop, spread into shocking, blossom-like stains on the marble floor. Seeing my condition, Mrs. Beverly was the first to jump up. "What are you faking? Weren't you strong enough when you pushed me just now?" She brushed imaginary dust from her sleeves, as if I were something dirty. Willow conveniently opened her eyes weakly, tugging at Marcus's sleeve. "Marcus, go quickly and check on Aurora. Don't worry about me." Marcus froze in place, his gaze shifting between me and Willow. I watched his throat bob, watched his fist clench and unclench, before he finally bent down and picked up Willow. "I'll take Willow back to her room first." He turned and left without a hint of hesitation. "Marcus," I called out hoarsely, blood already soaking my skirt. The cramping pain in my abdomen forced me to curl up. "Save me, this is your chill." Before I could finish, Willow suddenly coughed violently, and Marcus immediately tightened his arms around her. "Don't be afraid, Willow. Well, go find a doctor right away." His hurried steps out the door overlapped with the image of him half a year ago, rushing me to the hospital when I had acute appendicitis. Only this time, he was holding someone else. As he turned, Willow, resting on his shoulder, gave me a triumphant smile. Everyone surrounded Willow as they left, their hurried footsteps gradually fading away. More and more blood flowed, and my vision began to blur. From outside the door, I heard Mr. William and Mrs. Beverly talking, causing such a scene on the second day of marriage. How inauspicious. Let her kneel there. No one is allowed to go in. Let's see how long she can fake it. The door creaked shut, blocking out the last sliver of sunlight. I curled up on the floor, my nails digging into the tile grout. I let the pool of blood expand, my consciousness slowly consumed. The pungent smell of disinfectant stinging my nostrils was when I realized I was still alive. You're awake. Don't move around. You still have N4 in your arm. My mother's voice came from beside me. Her eyes were swollen like peaches, her fingertips still stained with fresh tears. She had clearly been crying for a long time. Eleanor, how did I get here? My mother's hand trembled violently, splashing hot water onto my hand. She hastily wiped it with her sleeve, but tears fell first. You ask me how. If I hadn't been worried you wouldn't adapt after just getting married and specifically went to see you, you would have died in the household. Instantly, the scenes before I lost consciousness flooded back, Marcus's push, the shocking blood on the floor. Willow's triumphant smile as she leaned on his shoulder. My nails unconsciously dug into my palm, and blood beads seeped from the scabbing wounds. The baby. I instinctively touched my lower abdomen, where thick bandages were wrapped. My mother suddenly covered her mouth, her shoulders trembling violently. Aurora, she choked, grabbing my hand. The doctor said you had a miscarriage complicated by infection, and your uterus was too severely damaged. In the future, it will be very difficult for you to get pregnant again. I stared at a crack in the ceiling, where a spider was spinning a web yesterday. I was caressing my belly, imagining whose eyes my child would have. Today, even my right to be a mother was crushed. Marcus. I heard my own terrifyingly calm voice. He came to see you this morning, but he had an urgent company matter. Staring at her evasive eyes, I suddenly smiled. Eleanor, he never came, did he? My mother froze, then her eyes reddened. I called him more than a dozen times. He said you were faking it and told me not to bother him. She fumbled for her phone, as if to prove something. The screen lit up with Marcus's last reply. Stop acting, I nodded. It was as I expected. Marcus was probably busy preparing nourishing meals for Willow right now, with no time to care whether I lived or died. But my heart still felt like it was being slowly tortured by a blunt knife. The pain making my every breath taste of rust. Eleanor, I need to use the restroom. When my mother helped me out of bed, I realized my legs were shaking like a leaf in the wind. The person in the mirror had a pale face, lips cracked and bleeding, looking like a living corpse. The radiant and confident Aurora who once was, had died in the household's pool of blood. As I passed the corridor, a familiar voice drifted over. Walk slowly, mind the steps. Marcus's voice was so tender it could drip honey, completely different from when he roared at me yesterday. Around the corner, he had his arm half wrapped around Willow's waist, holding a prenatal scan report. Willow intentionally puffed out her stomach. Marcus, the doctor said the baby is very healthy. I froze, instantly understanding what it meant to have my heart ripped apart. It turned out that on the very day of my miscarriage, his other child had already taken root. Marcus saw me first. He recoiled as if shocked, instantly letting go of Willow's arm, his face turning pale. Aurora, why are you here? Willow immediately clutched her stomach and hid behind him, saying timidly, Sister, please don't be angry, it's all my fault, but the baby is innocent. Hearing this, Marcus lunged forward, blocking her, his eyes as wary as if I were a thief. What are you trying to do? Wasn't it enough to make Willow faint? Do you want to make her miscarry too? His words were like a cold blast, taking away my last bit of warmth. The man who once drank until his stomach bled protecting me, now glared at me with the eyes of a murderer, looking at his hand, instinctively protecting Willow's belly. I laughed out loud. Congratulations, Marcus. You finally got what you wanted. My laughter tugged at the wound in my abdomen, making my vision go black from the pain. Marcus's face stiffened, a flicker of panic in his eyes. Aurora, let me explain. Explain what? I interrupted him, my gaze sweeping over Willow's slightly bulging abdomen. Explain how you tricked me into marriage while secretly conceiving with her. So all those nights of overtime were spent in Willow's bed. Willow immediately reddened around the eyes, shrinking further behind Marcus. Sister, don't blame Marcus, it's all my fault. Marcus reacted like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, fiercely shielding her behind him. Aurora. Willow is delicate, she can't handle stress. Ignoring their intimate display, I turned and walked back to my room. Every step felt like I was treading on knife blades. I lay in the hospital bed for a month, and not a single person from the household came to see me, but from the nurse's idle chatter, I already knew how doting the household was towards Willow. Mrs. Beverly personally prepared nourishing meals for Willow. Mr. William booked the entire VIP floor, and Marcus waited on her hand and foot 24 hours a day. All the attention I had once dreamed of was given to Willow. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Marcus. Come home when you're not angry. Don't make Eleanor and William wait too long. Willow needs your care too. I stared at the screen and sneered. This was my husband. I had a miscarriage and almost died from heavy bleeding. Yet all he thought about was having me return to wait on her hand and foot for his beloved Aurora. My mother worriedly gripped my cold hand. I looked up at the window, the sunlight so dazzling it made me want to cry. Eleanor. The household wants me to go home immediately to wait on the pregnant Willow. My mother trembled with anger. How outrageous. How could they treat you like this? She suddenly covered her mouth and wept. It's all your father's and my fault. We shouldn't have let you marry for money. I slowly wiped away her tears. Eleanor, don't cry. My fingers brushed over the spot on my lower abdomen. It felt empty, yet like molten lava was boiling within. I'll go back and wait on her. After returning from the hospital, the gazes of everyone in the household were laced with venom. Mrs. Beverly, leaning back casually on the leather sofa, impatiently tapped her fingers on the coffee table. What are you standing around for? Willow's medicine needs to be brewed. I lowered my head and walked over, my fingertips digging hard into my palm, unnoticed by anyone. As I took the bag of precious herbs, okay, Eleanor, in the kitchen, I stared at the bubbling medicinal broth in the pot, listening to the joyful chatter from the living room. Willow, you must take good care of this pregnancy. Mrs. Beverly's voice held undisguised joy. The master said your child would be a blessing to the Vance family. Marcus, spend more time with Willow. Don't let her get tired. Mr. Williams' instruction followed closely. I mechanically stirred the medicinal spoon, the porcelain spoon clinking against the pot, sharp and jarring. The smell of the boiling medicine made my eyes sting, but I knew it wasn't because I wanted to cry. Aurora, Willow's sweet voice came from the living room. My feet are swollen. Come and massage them for me. She leaned languidly on the chaise lounge. A luxurious gold and emerald anklet, which Marcus had personally put on her that morning, adorning her pale ankle, that was supposed to be the household's family heirloom, promised to me. I silently knelt before her, my palm pressing against her cool ankle. Harder. Haven't you eaten? She frowned, her toes curling impatiently. I increased the pressure. She suddenly shrieked and pulled back her foot, her eyes instantly welling with tears. Marcus. She pinched me. Marcus rushed out of the study, without even asking. He grabbed my wrist. Aurora. What are you doing? I shook my head, my eyes red, my voice as faint as a mosquito's buzz. I didn't. Willow's feet are just swollen. Willow immediately sobbed, throwing herself into his arms, her shoulders shaking. She must be jealous that I'm pregnant. Marcus stared at me for a few seconds, then suddenly released my wrist, his tone icy. Willow is sensitive to stress right now. Be careful from now on. As he turned, he dropped an even crueler command. Clean all the guest rooms on the 3rd floor. We have guests tonight. As night fell, I knelt on the guest room floor, my body still recovering from the miscarriage, the cold rag wiped across the teakwood floor, water stains mixing with my tears, glinting coldly in the moonlight. From the master bedroom, separated by a single wall, came nauseating sounds. Marcus, slower, the baby. Willow's coquettish voice penetrated the wall, clearly audible. The creaking of the mattress and Marcus's heavy breathing were like blunt knives, slowly torturing my nerves. I bit down hard on my lower lip until I tasted blood. Suddenly, the master bedroom door opened. Marcus emerged in his bathrobe, visibly startled when he saw me kneeling on the floor. You? I continued to mechanically wipe the floor, as if I hadn't heard anything. His throat bobbed. A flicker of emotion I couldn't decipher in his eyes. Finally he just said, Aurora, bear with it a little longer. We'll be free once the baby is born. Okay. I heard my own numb reply. He actually thought I would still believe such a lie. 3 days later, I accidentally shattered Mrs. Beverly's favorite jade bracelet. Slap. A hard slap landed on my face. Get out, you jinx! Mrs. Beverly's sharp voice pierced my eardrums. I covered my face and ran into the rain, but around the corner, I swiftly hailed a taxi, to the airport quickly. Through the rain-streaked car window, the estate gradually shrunk into a tiny black dot. I pulled out my phone and saw a message from my mother. Aurora, your father and I have settled down in Switzerland, waiting for you to come anytime. I took a deep breath and replied, I'm leaving today, in the departure lounge. I took out my new phone and bundled and sent all the evidence I had collected during this time. Yes, I endured humiliation and returned to the household for this moment. Now, everything was finally about to end, as the boarding announcement sounded. I snapped the SIM card in half and casually threw it into the trash. Marcus, goodbye. At the same moment, in the hospital's obstetrics and gynecology department, Marcus was accompanying Willow for a prenatal checkup when a sudden panic clutched at his heart. As if an invisible hand had gripped it tightly, the last time he felt this was when I wanted to break up with him. He instinctively pulled out his phone and dialed my number. I'm sorry, the number you dialed is switched off. What's going on? He frowned, immediately calling his assistant. Check's whereabouts now. 10 minutes later, his assistant's anxious voice came through. Mr. Vance, Ms. Ruin's identity has been deregistered. Also, the hospital just pulled up the records. Ms. Ruin's previous miscarriage caused severe uterine damage, and she can no longer conceive. Marcus's phone clattered to the floor. He remembered me clutching my belly and curling up on the floor in the main hall of the estate that day. He remembered my words, Marcus, you'll regret this. It turned out that what he had personally pushed away was not only my body, but also our child. Check on the household. His voice trembled immediately. The assistant's reply plunged him into an icy abyss. Everyone from the Ruin family deregistered their domestic identities 3 days ago. Their immigration procedures are complete, and they cannot be traced back. Marcus stood still, his blood seeming to freeze. Just then, his phone suddenly vibrated. Mr. Vance, a big gift for you. The moment he clicked on the attachment, his world collapsed. When the plane landed in Switzerland, my phone was bombarded with news notifications. The group suspected of financial fraud. Stock price plummets 30%. Tax authorities raid Vance. Scandalous video of Vance's young Willow. And a private doctor leaked. I turned off my phone, my fingertips lightly stroking the screen. The snow-capped Alps outside the window reflected the cold smile on my lips. Marcus must be in agony, cradling that gift right now. The thunderous crash of Marcus kicking open the study door startled the crows perched outside the window. Willow frantically slammed her laptop shut, the color draining completely from her face. Marcus, let me explain. Explain what? Marcus's hand, gripping her throat, showed bulging veins. His other hand roughly yanked open the laptop screen. Explain how you were having intimate encounters with that wild man on our marital bed. Or explain how this child in your belly isn't even a Vance. He violently snatched the report from the desk and slapped it onto her face. As the papers scattered, the DNA test results were clearly visible. Paternity excluded. Willow's nails scraped an ear-splitting sound on the leather chair back. Aurora framed me. She forged. Marcus suddenly laughed, a laugh like broken glass scraping metal. She even sent me your hotel records from the Hilton on the 23rd of last month. Do you want to see the surveillance footage of how you clung to that doctor? As if completely enraged, Willow suddenly shrieked, her manicured nails digging into Marcus's chest. What about you? You knew she was pregnant and still pushed her into a miscarriage. You're 100 times more disgusting than me. Marcus's expression instantly froze. Her uterus is severely damaged. She can never be a mother in this lifetime. You personally killed your own child. Willow laughed hysterically, her once delicate and alluring smile now twisted like a demon. Marcus stumbled backward, knocking over the antique display shelf. Priceless porcelain shattered into pieces on the floor. Bitch. He lunged at her like a beast, kicking her in the stomach. You made me lose my only child. Willow's screams attracted the rest of the household. When Beverly rushed in, she saw the blood seeping from beneath Willow. Eleanor, save the baby. Willow's outstretched hand was slapped away by Mrs. Beverly. Mrs. Beverly spat on her face. You're nothing but a jinx. She grabbed Willow's hair and slammed her head against the wall. You tricked the household into raising a bastard. May you die a horrible death. Mr. William directly swung his carved walking stick at her abdomen. Butler, throw this slut out. In the end, it was the old butler who couldn't bear to watch and secretly called an ambulance. Later, I heard that Willow suffered a uterine perforation and severe hemorrhage, and the doctors had to remove her entire uterus. How ironic. When she forced me to sign the agreement forbidding me from getting pregnant, did she ever imagine she would face this day herself? I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, the news anchor's voice drifting from the television. The group has officially declared bankruptcy, and Chairman Vance has been arrested on suspicion of embezzlement. My mother walked over with a cup of black tea, her warm embrace enveloping my trembling shoulders. It's all over. I shook my head, my fingertips brushing the hideous scar on my lower abdomen. Beneath the scar, my empty uterus seemed to still echo with the cries of a child. I gazed at the perpetually frozen glaciers on the snow-capped mountains. No, this is just the beginning. A year later. Switzerland, madame. That gentleman has been standing outside the store all day again. Chloe, my assistant, handed me a warm towel, hesitating before speaking. I wiped fingerprints from a jewelry tray, then looked up at the display window. Marcus stood in the rain like a phantom, his expensive suit wrinkled and clinging to his body, his hair, once meticulously styled, now hung like dry straw. Should I call security? Chloe asked softly. I chuckled, casually turning my wedding ring. The diamond's facets cut a cold arc in the light. No need, as I pushed open the door. The rain mixed with the mist from lake, assailing me. Marcus suddenly fell to his knees hitting the stone pavement with a dull thud. Aurora. He reached out, trying to grab my skirt, but froze when he saw my utterly cold expression. Please, give me one more chance. I stepped back half a pace, perfectly revealing my diamond ring to him. Allow me to introduce you to my husband Ethan. The man who emerged from behind the glass door put his arm around my waist, his voice deep and gentle. Marcus's pupils constricted violently. He recognized Ethan, the impoverished student he had undermined to the point of almost dropping out. Now wore a bespoke suit Marcus couldn't afford, his fingers playfully toying with the contract to acquire the group. Impossible. Marcus's throat bobbed, and he suddenly choked up a mouthful of blood. When did you? I leaned down and whispered in his ear. Thanks to the agreement you forced me to sign back then. It allowed us to end things without even registering the marriage. Otherwise, I would have had to share my assets with you in a divorce. Marcus's face instantly turned pale. He understood the sarcasm in my words. It was common knowledge that the group had already gone bankrupt. He didn't know that Ethan, that poor upperclassman from college, back then, Marcus, wanting to monopolize student council resources and exclude the upperclassmen who secretly admired me, deliberately framed Ethan for academic fraud, forcing him to drop out. It was I who secretly helped him collect evidence, allowing him to barely save his degree at the time. I just couldn't bear to see the upperclassmen's future ruined because of Marcus. Little did I know. I had saved my own desperate and helpless self. I gently stroked my diamond ring, my voice as soft as a blade. Do you remember the night you locked me in the main hall of the estate? Ethan helped me forge an identity so I could smoothly leave the country. Marcus's breathing became ragged, disbelief churning in his eyes. Yes, he was always by my side. I smiled. From the first day you laid a hand on me, he never left. Ethan's hand rested gently on my shoulder, his voice calm but with an undeniable force. Marcus, everything you owe her. I will get back for her, one by one. Marcus trembled violently, suddenly vomiting a mouthful of blood that stained the stone pavement red. I linked arms with Ethan and turned away, not looking at him again. The glass display window reflected his kneeling figure, looking exactly like I did when I was curled up in a pool of blood that year. Back inside the store, Ethan made me a cup of hot tea. His fingertips gently brushed the faint scar on my wrist. That was a mark Marcus had left. Does it hurt? He asked. I shook my head, leaning into his embrace. It stopped hurting a long time ago. Ethan lowered his head and kissed the top of my head, his voice tinged with suppressed anger. I should have found you sooner. I chuckled. It's not too late. Now is perfect. He was silent for a moment, then suddenly said, The group's bankruptcy is just the beginning. I looked up at him, the coldness in his eyes making me slightly shiver. Everything he made you lose, I will make him pay back double. Ethan's voice was soft, yet every word was like a blade. Including that child. My eyes welled up, and I clutched his sleeve tighter. He remembered after all, remembered everything I had lost, remembered the pain I had hidden away. Outside, the rain intensified, and Marcus's figure had long disappeared, and my world Finally, welcome, true sunshine. On the third day, Marcus knelt outside my jewelry store. Willow also found her way there. She was emaciated to the point of being barely recognizable, her once meticulously cared for long hair now dry like straw, her eyes were bloodshot. Like a demon crawling out of hell, Aurora, she shrieked, rushing into the store, clutching a fruit knife. You ruined me. How dare you live so well? I motioned for the security guards not to move and calmly looked at her. Willow, you ruined yourself. Bullshit. She laughed hysterically, the knife point aimed directly at my throat. If you hadn't leaked those videos, how would the household have gone bankrupt? How would Marcus have abandoned me? How would I? Her voice trailed off, her trembling hand touching her flat lower abdomen. I knew what she was thinking. The child she used to tie Marcus down ultimately became the last straw that broke her. You made me permanently infertile. You made the household abandon me. Willow's tears mixed with her lipstick, smearing like blood. Looking grotesque, she lunged forward. The sharp whistle of the blade cutting through the air, piercing my eardrums. I didn't dodge, because I knew someone would stop her. But I didn't expect Marcus to rush in. He grabbed Willow's wrist. Are you insane? Willow stared at him blankly, then suddenly laughed. Marcus, are you here to protect her? Marcus didn't answer, just gripped her wrist tightly. Willow's eyes gradually grew cold. You still love her, after all. The next second, she suddenly twisted the blade and plunged it fiercely into Marcus's abdomen. Thud! The dull, sickening sound of the blade sinking into flesh sent shivers down my spine. Marcus stumbled backward, blood instantly soaking his white shirt. He looked down at the wound, then up at me, his lips trembling as if he wanted to say something. Willow let go of the knife handle and laughed wildly. Since you choose her, then let's die together. Marcus fell to his knees, blood pooling beneath him in a shocking red stain. He painfully crawled towards me, his bloodied fingers clutching at the hem of my skirt. Aurora, I'm sorry. I looked down at him. The man who once stood so high now resembled a dying dog, his eyes filled with pleading. The child, our child. He coughed up a mouthful of blood, his voice fragmented. I regret it. I knelt down and gently pried his fingers open. Marcus, you never deserved to speak of that child. His pupils suddenly constricted. Have you forgotten? I leaned close to his ear, speaking in a voice only we could hear. On the day of the miscarriage, the doctor said your child with Willow was already 2 months old. But we had only been married for a month. Marcus's face instantly turned ashen. Police sirens wailed, growing louder. Willow was pinned to the ground, still laughing wildly. Marcus, you deserve this. The household all deserve this. As the police approached to inquire about the situation, I pulled back my skirt, which Marcus had clutched, and said calmly, I don't know either the culprit or the victim. The moment I turned, I heard Marcus's heartbreaking cry, Aurora, please forgive me. I didn't look back. The glass display window reflected my indifferent profile, and Ethan's worried gaze as he pushed open the door. Are you okay? He pulled me into his arms. I shook my head, burying my face in his chest. Outside the window, paramedics carried away the dying Marcus, and police cars took the delirious Willow. And in my world, the dust finally settled. The morning sunlight streamed in through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I sat on the terrace of Ethan's newly purchased villa, holding a cup of hot coffee. The TV was broadcasting financial news. The group's bankruptcy case reached its final judgment today. The court ruled that all of Vance's assets would be auctioned off to settle debts. Chairman Chenzhou was sentenced to 10 years in prison for suspected embezzlement, bribery, and other charges. The screen cut to the scene of the group's building being sealed off. What was once a glorious business empire was now nothing but ruins. Ethan wrapped his arms around my waist from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. Are you satisfied? I chuckled softly, placing the coffee cup on the table. Not yet. He raised an eyebrow. I want to see Marcus lose everything. I turned, my fingertips tracing his tie. And then, I want to witness you, the one he once looked down on the most, possess everything he ever dreamed of. Ethan chuckled softly, cupping my chin and kissing me. As you wish. 3 days later, Marcus's funeral. I hadn't intended to go, but Ethan said there should be some closure. The funeral was pitifully bleak. The relatives and friends who once flattered the household were nowhere to be seen. Mrs. Beverly was slumped in front of the mourning hall, crying her heart out. Marcus, how could you leave Eleanor? I stood in the corner, coldly observing the farce. Suddenly, Mrs. Beverly sharply raised her head, her gaze piercing me like a knife. Aurora. You bitch! You killed my son! She stumbled forward, but was stopped by the security guards. I looked at her calmly. Mrs. Beverly, your son was stabbed by Willow. What does that have to do with me? Nonsense! Mrs. Beverly shrieked hysterically. If you hadn't exposed those scandalous videos, how would the household have gone bankrupt? How would Marcus have fallen to such a state? I couldn't be bothered to argue with her any longer and turned to leave later. I heard that Mrs. Beverly was targeted by those she had bullied in the past and was sent to a mental institution. She rambled deliriously about the household having no successor, but no one paid her any mind. How ironic, Marcus once swore, if I betray you, I will have no successor now. The household was not only bankrupt, but its bloodline was completely severed. Indeed, what goes around comes around. Just then, Ethan's assistant rushed over, reporting in a low voice, "Mr. Ethan, we just received news that Willow committed suicide in prison." I paused. How did she die? She used a makeshift blade to cut her wrists. The assistant paused. By the time the prison guards found her, she had already bled out. I closed my eyes, feeling an absurd sense of desolation welling up inside me. Willow gambled until her death. She gambled that Marcus would regret, that he would turn back and look at her. Unfortunately, she lost her bet. After leaving the funeral, Ethan took me to the beach. The sun was setting, waves crashed against the rocks, and I walked barefoot on the sand, letting the seawater wash over my ankles. "Do you regret it?" Ethan suddenly asked. I shook my head. No regrets. He chuckled, pulling out a small velvet box from his pocket and kneeling before me. "Then now, will you marry me?" Inside the box was a diamond ring, much larger than the one Marcus had given me before. I had indeed falsely claimed we were married just to spite Marcus. I looked at him and suddenly smiled. "Ethan, are you proposing or showing off?" "Both." He raised an eyebrow, his eyes filled with confident determination. "I want everyone to know that you, Aurora, are mine." I held out my hand, letting him slide the ring onto my ring finger. "All right, Mr. Ethan." Amidst the sound of waves, he leaned down and kissed me. In the distance, the sun completely sank into the horizon, and my new life was just beginning. In the early morning, as Ethan embraced me from behind, the sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, stretching our intertwined shadows long. "What are you thinking about?" His lips brushed my ear, his voice deep and gentle. I shook my head, my fingertips unconsciously caressing the diamond ring on my ring finger. The diamond refracted tiny glints of light in the sun, making me squint slightly. "Nothing. Just thinking. Destiny is truly interesting." Ethan chuckled softly, his long fingers covering the back of my hand, intertwining with mine. "Like what?" "For instance," I paused, my gaze falling on the flourishing rose garden outside the window. "For instance, I once thought I would never love anyone again in this life." He was silent for a moment, then suddenly turned me to face him, his eyes filled with an unyielding tenderness. "Aurora, you don't need to love me, you just need to allow me to love you. And that's enough." I froze, my heart feeling as if something had gently brushed against it. Ethan lowered his head and kissed my forehead, his voice as soft as a sigh. "Let's get married." It wasn't a question, but a statement, just like him. Assertive yet gentle, he entered my life irresistibly, mending the broken cracks little by little. I looked up at him and suddenly smiled. "All right." Sunlight fell on his eyelashes, casting a small shadow. He paused for a moment, then an astonishing light burst forth in his eyes, as if he had received the most precious gift in the world. "Really? Really?" He suddenly lifted me up and spun me around, his laughter making my eardrums tingle. I wrapped my arms around his neck and laughed along with him. In the distance, the photographer pressed the shutter, capturing the shimmering diamond ring in that moment. On our wedding day, I wore a simple white wedding gown, holding a bouquet of fresh roses, and stood at the church entrance. Ethan, in a sharp suit, extended his hand to me, his eyes revealing uncontrollable nervousness and anticipation. "Nervous?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah," he admitted honestly, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Afraid you'd run away." I chuckled, placing my hand in his palm. No escape now, the priest's blessings, the applause of friends and family. The moment we exchanged rings, everything was as beautiful as a dream, until night fell, and after the guests had dispersed, Ethan carried me into the bedroom and gently placed me on the bed. "Tired?" I shook my head, my gaze falling on the photo frame on the nightstand. It was a photo of us from our first date, with the Riverton Sea as the backdrop. Ethan followed my gaze and suddenly said, "Aurora, let's have a child." My body stiffened, and I instinctively touched my lower abdomen. There was a scar there, a wound that would never heal. He seemed to sense my emotions and immediately took my hand. "If you don't want to, we don't have to." I shook my head, my eyes feeling a little warm. "It's not that I don't want to, it's just—" "I know," he interrupted me, gently kissing away the tears from the corners of my eyes. "We can take our time later." After much effort, we truly had a child. It was a girl, with eyes and brows just like mine, but a stubborn personality like Ethan's. Every time I saw her, I would think of the child who was never born. If he were still alive, he would be running and jumping now, sweetly calling me mommy, wouldn't he? One night, after tucking Luna to sleep, I stood alone on the balcony, lost in thought. Ethan embraced me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. Thinking of him again. I didn't speak, just nodded gently. He was silent for a moment, then suddenly said, "Tomorrow, let's go visit him." The next day, we brought a bouquet of fresh roses and went to the cemetery. The tombstone was very clean. Someone clearly came to clean it often. I knelt down, placed the roses in front of the tombstone, and gently traced the small name with my fingertips. "Baby, Mommy is here to see you." Ethan stood behind me, his hand resting on my shoulder, silently giving me strength. Sunlight fell on the tombstone, highlighting the words in memory of our. Stinging my eyes, Luna suddenly rushed into our arms, giggling, "Daddy, Mommy, hug." Aurora lowered her head and kissed Luna's soft hair, her nose filled with the scent of roses and milk. "Luna, Mommy once lost a flower, but now I have an entire garden." Luna nodded, seemingly understanding, and buried her face in Aurora's neck. I closed my eyes, feeling the warmth and heartbeat within the embrace. This was my new life, earned with blood and tears, and the completeness Ethan had gradually built with the rest of his life. Sycamore leaves fell, silently covering the scarred patch of ground in the corner of the courtyard, and in my world, spring had finally arrived.